Hello, hello. Okay, so if you can hear me, everything is ready, so we can start. So my name is Mateusz, and today, again, I have the pleasure of being the host for the second meetup in the series of Angular Spring Camp meetups. I represent Angular.love, who is the organizer of this gathering. For those who are online, we are live streaming from Warsaw, but also this meetup is a little bit different than the first one because we are online, but also here on site where there is quite a lot of people with us, so we are just extremely happy. So before we move directly to the talks, I need to make some announcement and provide some organizator information. So first and foremost, I need to express our thanks to the House of Angular, who is our sponsor. House of Angular team is specializing in the Angular development and code audits. So whenever you're struggling with your project or just start a brand new project, don't hesitate to reach out to them for the help. What's more, we will have today 3 awesome talks. 2 of our guests are from the abroad, so maybe at the beginning we make some warm welcome for them. So let's welcome, guys. Following each of the session, we'll have the Q&A session. The question could be asked here on site, but also online. So don't hesitate to drop your question on the chat or just wait with your question till the end of the presentation. Each of the question will be asked. Also, this event is for the community and is thanks for the community. So we need your input. So following the event and during the also breaks, which we will have following each talk will be 10 minutes breaks at the chat. They will be linked to the survey, which we ask you to fill and help us to improve the future events to be even better thanks to your feedback, because everything we do is for the community. And right now we can just jump directly to the talks. We'll have 3 talks. The first one by the Krzysztof, who will talk about the Angular query. Then Luca will talk about the NX. And at the end, Aristeidis will talk about the Angular 18. So let's start with you, Chris. The stage is yours. Let's welcome the Chris.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I bet we can all agree that Redux-like solutions such as NGX Store or NGXS have dominated Angular state management landscape for years. And don't get me wrong, they are still really great solutions for the use cases. But with the introductions of signals, we got some fresh alternatives, such as Signal Store, for example. It has gained a lot of attention recently, and it's no wonder, because this is a very flexible and powerful library. But today, I would like to introduce you to yet another new player, which hasn't gained such big recognition, but it's still worth trying. And this is the Angular query. So what can it help us with? So if you reach the very first page of the documentation, you will see exactly this. So it says that it's good with all kind of server state manipulation. But what does it really mean and how it's achieved? Yeah, we will just get to these questions in a minute. But before we dive in, let me quickly introduce myself. So I'm Krzysztof Skorupka. I live in Warsaw, Poland. I work for House of Angular, and I'm also a member of our great Angular.love community. Okay, so getting back to our topic. What is don't get confused with this TAN-stack query. I will explain in a second. So what is TAN-stack query or Angular query? It's a state management library that focuses on asynchronous state, which is typically server state. So it is not like general purpose state management library, or so, and you will also not keep all of your global state there or local state. It's not like that. It focuses purely on this asynchronous or server state. So it has one job, but it does it really well. So that's very important thing. And by the way, this is like a very broad use case, because I believe, as you all know, pretty much every application nowadays connects to some external resources. So initially, it was available only for the React, where it gained a lot of popularity. But in version 4, there was quite heavy refactoring conducted that allowed to separate query core from the framework adapters. Again, just React at that time. So really, when we are talking about Angular query, what we have in mind is the query core plus Angular adapter, which is applied on top of the query core. And nowadays, we also have adapters for the other frameworks, such as Vue, Solid, Svelte. So what about Angular adapter? So things are quite interesting here, because actually we have two. So the first one, which was implemented, is the nginit query, and it's unofficial. It was developed by Nathaniel Basel. It is stable, and primarily it was just working with RxJS, but now it also supports signals. And some time ago, Nathaniel was also offered to make this adapter an official one, to make it a part of the TAN-stack query monorepo, but for some reason he didn't decide to and just wanted to keep it separate. So because of that, recently, like half a year ago, another one was implemented, this time official, and is by mainly by Arnaud de Vries. I hope I spell it correctly. And it's experimental, but it's mainly because it's a part of this monorepo. So it's versioned along with all of the other libraries in this monorepo. So otherwise, it's still under the development, and otherwise, no breaking changes will be allowed, between the major versions. So that's mainly why, because it works pretty well already. And it supports only signals. Maybe it's for now, maybe RxJS support will be added later, maybe not, and we'll just rely on the interop from Angular. And with all of the respect I have for Nathaniel Basel for his work in Angular community, today I will focus only on the latter, mainly because it's the official one. Okay, so what kind of building blocks do we need in this kind of solution? So first, we need to be able to read some data. And this is the responsibility of query. So typically, this relates to all our get operations. But if you use post for reading the data from the server, that's totally fine too. Another one is the mutation, which is responsible for modifying our data. So typically, all of the put, post, delete requests in your application will fall into this bucket. And as it occurs, we also need a kind of a wrapper around it to make it all work together, and also to instantiate the caching mechanism for us. So what is a query? Basically, query is just a declaration of a dependency on an external resource. And this dependency is identified by a unique key. So let's look at this example. And as we can see, we have a users component here. And what you are telling the Angular query library here is, I have this component, and I would like to rely on some external resource. It will be identified by this users key. And here is how you can fetch the users, this query function, which needs to be promise-based, by the way. And that's it. And just because of that fact, Angular query will know that our component needs this data. And as soon as it will get instantiated, it will get the data for us, either from the cache, if it's already available there, or it will reach this fetch users function, probably hitting the network, and get the results from there, and also save it to the cache under this key. So it can be later used either by this component or some other components that also need the same resource. And also, Angular query is able to track all of these consumers, which we call observers, of a particular resource. So if we have like 5 components which are interested in the user's resource, it can track them. It knows when they start and when they are destroyed. And when working with the query, especially in the template, but not only, you will notice pretty quickly that there are 2 sets of statuses, actually. So one is just status, and it's more related to the query itself. Pending means that we have no data yet, and we are just waiting for it. Error and success are pretty obvious. And the fetch status is more related to the status of the query function itself, which can be fetching if we are actively fetching the data at the moment. It can be paused, for example, if we lost network connection temporarily or not. And it can be idle when nothing really happens with our function at the moment. So let's have a look on this example. So at the very top, we can see that we are checking for the is pending. If is pending is true, it means there is no data. We can show some kind of a loader, and that's pretty much it. If is error is true, then it means we have an error, we can display it. And if we go to fall back to else, it means we are in the success scenario in this case. So there are some data already to be displayed. So you can see these 4 at the bottom. We are iterating through the data, users query data collection, and just rendering user cards. But on top of that, you can also see the check for user's query is fetching. So this means that we are in the success scenario, but at the same time, the function is fetching. So basically, we are fetching the data in the background. So that's why we can, for example, display checking for updates or something like that to improve the user experience. So as you can see, status success and fetch status fetching, for example, is like totally legal state in Angular query. And what are the other common options that we can use with the inject query? I picked 3 because I believe these 3 will be the most common you will encounter, but there's much more. So first of all, we have stale time. And it really tells us for how long the data is considered to be fresh. So here we have it set to 15 seconds. So it means if we enter this component, then go out and get back within 15 seconds, we'll just get the data served from the cache and nothing will be refetched. And the next one is GC time, which stands for garbage collection time. And this one really tells us for how long we need to keep the data after it gets unused before we completely remove it from the cache. So the same scenario, let's say that we are getting to this component, then we get out and get back after 30 seconds, let's say. So in this case, we still have the data in the cache, so we will be presented with that. But in the background, they will be refetched because the stale time already passed. And the third scenario here is if we get in, get out, and get back after, let's say, 3 minutes. So it means that our data was already garbage collected. So basically, the data will be loaded as if was the very first time we are doing this. So no data available in the meantime. And then there is another option, which is called enabled. Remember when I told you that as soon as the component gets instantiated, then the thing starts running. So with this flag, we can control it. So initially, you see the signal is set to false. But as soon as we turn it to true, so it's not fetching before that, but after it's turned to true, then we start running our query. And by the way, you can see that to the inject query, we just pass a function with the options, and this is wrapped internally in the computed. So every signal you use there, you can make sure that will make this reactive. So every change to the signals used in these options will be reflected in the config. OK, so what are the good practices regarding the query keys? So first of all, we always need to reflect our variables we use in our query function in our keys. And why is that? So just have a look at this example. We are loading the users by ID here. So if our query key will just be users detail, and that's it, we'll just keep loading new users from different IDs when we will be switching between the components, and we'll keep overriding the same key in the cache over and over again. So there will be no benefit. But if we put this ID as part of the query key, then each user will get its own entry in the query, in the cache, sorry. So it's like user detail 1, user detail 2, and so on and so forth. So this is not even like a good practice. It's rather like a must-have, I would say. And the other thing is it's a good idea to collocate the keys together and also to make them kind of hierarchical or prefix-based. So as you see here on this example, each subsequent entry in this query keys map is using some of the previous as the prefix. So for example, if you look at list, you will notice that the result will consist of users, lists, and filter name, which is, for example, John. Let's say it's our search term, right? So it will be users, list, John, or users, list, filter, Alice, and so on. And the same goes for the detail. It will be users, detail 5, users, detail 6, and so on. And why is this useful? Collocating the keys makes them really better to reason about and improves our maintainability. And making them with this prefix-based approach will help us further with invalidating the cache. We'll see this in a few minutes, but it's basically like that. And the usage is, of course, very simple. We just call the function we want, and it just constructs the key for us. OK, but what about the queries itself? As Angular developers, we usually don't like to put things like HTTP client calls into our component directly, or at all like do this for every component over and over again. We rather want to reuse them. So your first idea could be like this, but I will immediately say, don't do this. This is not a good idea, and I will explain you why. A few minutes ago, I told you that Angular query is able to track all of the observers of specific queries, right? And that's because when we call the inject query, it's attached to the specific injector in our application. So if we call it for a component, it's attached to the component injector, and it's created with it and destroyed together with the component. But in this case, our service is provided in root. So if we call inject query as part of this service and just assign it to the field of this service, this will basically mean that it will live pretty much forever until our app is destroyed, because it will live as long as the root injector lives. And so Angular query cannot really track this. There will always be one active observer. And even if we use it in like 5 different components, there will still be just one observer from the Angular query perspective. So this is totally a bad idea. Don't do that. So what's better alternative? If you really want to stick to services, you can call inject query as part of some method of your service. So this way, if you call it in the component, it will be attached to the component injector rather than the service injector. But this is still error prone and also a little bit artificial, because we're just doing this to have this common user service. handle, and also the invocation in the components is still a little bit verbose. So what's even better alternative? It's to create some reusable inject functions that are focused on very specific queries. So as you see, we have a set of 2 inject queries here. One is dedicated to the list, like to all users, and the other one for the user details. And as a result, our component looks very simple, and this is like quite elegant solution. Okay, so let's get to the query client. Basically, there is typically just one for the entire application. As there is only one cache for the entire application, we want it to be shared by all of the components across our app. And it's also able to accept the global configuration. So if you don't want to do this per query, or you would like to set some defaults, you can do it here. And it also acts as a primary access point for us to play with the cache. Like kind of directly, but not really. It just provides us a set of methods that are really useful when working with the cache. So here we see an example. We have a component, we inject query client, and we have the onInvalidate method. And when it's called, we are calling query client invalidate queries with the filter on query key, and we just pass this factory of users keys all, which is basically just users. So as a result, all of the queries that start with users will be invalidated. So it's users, users list, users detail, and so on and so forth. So now you see why this prefix-based approach is really useful. So in cases like that, but also we have some other filters available here, but this is definitely most common to invalidate by query key. And as I said, we set up query client like this. We just inject it to, provide it to our application config typically, and it accepts the defaults for the queries and for the mutations. And the stale time is by default 0, so it's pretty strict. That means that as long as we enter our component and the data gets refetched, let's say, immediately it's considered stale. So basically, each time we enter the component, we will be served, of course, the data from the cache, but it will be also refreshed in the background. So that's like pretty aggressive approach here. And the GC time, garbage collection time, it's set to 5 minutes. So by default, our data from the cache will be removed after being not used by within the period of 5 minutes. Okay, and the last concept is the mutation. We can instantiate a mutation by importing and calling inject mutation. And the minimal configuration that we need to provide is the mutation function in order for this mutation to do anything, basically. So as you see in this example, in the mutation function, we are just calling the update user on our user service, and yeah, basically updating the users and all the user. And also we have a set of convenience hooks that we can use. So in this example, I used on success. So as soon as we get the response from the server that the operation was successful, I'm invalidating the queries of all of the lists and also the specific user detail. So other details of the user are not touched because they are not affected, but potentially all of the lists can, or pretty much any of the lists, can contain the information of this user, and of course the detail of this user will also be affected. And we can run our mutation by calling mutate method on the object we constructed this way. Okay, so is there more? Yes, it is. So we have plenty more concepts in the library, which are pretty easily configurable. For example, we have a query trace. So Angular query in case of any, let's say, network error or server error rather, we'll just try to repeat the query with some quite interesting algorithm applied and like query again and again. And we can define like how many times it should do this, or like even provide our own implementation of the algorithm. We have also a very good support for the optimistic updates. In the example I just showed you, I was just updating the user and on success invalidating the cache. But it's really simple also to implement optimistic updates. So once we are hitting the server, we can already put, for example, this user to the UI, or even modify the cache and put it to the cache, so it will be reflected in all of the applications, all of the components in our applications that are using it. So that's pretty nice. Also, if you use pagination or any kind of load more or infinite scroll solution, there are also separate type of, let's say, inject queries for that purpose, and you are covered here. It's very good support for that, and you can really implement such concept very easily and with a good user experience. And for example, there is also a focus monitor. So we can even track if you switch from the window with your application to some other tab of the browser. And if you switch back, it will also refresh the data in the background. There is also network monitor. So as I said, for example, when we lose the network connection, it will just not blindly try to hit the network and send the queries or the mutations. It knows about this fact, and it just waits until the network connection is restored, and then it keeps running again. We also have some specific network modes because each application is different. Some of them can rely even on some offline resources. You can also do this in Angular query. It doesn't have so much sense, right, to use cache for some offline resources, but technically you can. So maybe you don't rely on the network at all, or maybe you have the PWA application that will just use also the service work and caching and so on. So these scenarios are also covered by different network modes implementations. And if we start combining all of these concepts, then you will see that this library is really powerful, and you can pretty much achieve any scenario you think of. But you might be wondering, if so much magic is happening with my data behind, how would I know like what's really going on there? How would I debug this and so on? So they have you covered also here. They have pretty nice dev tools designed for this library, and you can just import the component, put it to your template, and you are ready to go. And they look like pretty much like this. So all of your queries are listed there, and also the mutations. You can sort them. You can see the details. You see what's happening with them, what's their status, what's the data behind each entry in the cache, and so on and so forth. So it's really useful. Yeah, and I also prepared a very small demo application for you, so I can show you how it works in the reality. So just give me a second to adjust my setup. Okay, I'm back. So let's have a look on our application. This one is a very simple one. You can see that we have a list of posts, and each post can have a couple of comments. And we also have a list of comments. We have very simple search as well implemented for each of the lists. And yeah, that's basically it. You can see also on the bottom, there is the DevTools widget. Okay, so let me switch to the code, actually. And maybe let's start with the app config. So as I said, here we just configure the application and provide Angular query just once. And yeah, by the way, this application is running Angular release candidate 2 of version 18, and it's using the experimental zoneless chain detection, and it's working really pretty well with the Angular query, which is also signal-based. So yeah, that's cool, right? Yeah, so this is the app config, and maybe let's look to some queries we have in our application. So for example, for posts, you can see pretty much what you saw on the presentation. For the list, we have the also stale time defined for posts for 10 seconds, because we really consider our data posts usually don't change so often, right, on, let's say, blog, right? So we can safely set it to 10 seconds, and we are good with the stale time, the default one, GC time, the default one of 5 minutes, for example. Okay, so let's see the comments queries, for example. And here we expect that the comments are like, much volatile. So we define the stale time for 3 seconds and garbage collection time for 5 seconds. And basically, they are also very similar to what we've seen in the presentation and also in the posts queries. So that's pretty simple. And we have one mutation, as I said, so we can see it. This is the delete mutation at this time. So I will just show you in a second in the application. And on success, it just invalidates the list of the comments. Okay, so maybe let me also show you one of the components. Maybe let it be post component. And yeah, so this is the whole code that we need to have this kind of a list of results with a simple search, right? I just have a very simple search control here, convert its value changes observable to signal, and I feed the value to the inject post list query, and that's pretty much it. And when we look to the template, it's also not complicated. As you can see, we have this loading post, we display some error in case of error, and then there is a list of data when the query is successful. Okay, so maybe let's get back to our app because I think it's more interesting. So you see a list of posts here. Maybe let me refresh it. And I will throttle my network a little bit so you can better see what's really happening here. So let me, for example, search for some term. You see posts are loading. So it just takes a while for these results to load. And if I remove it and search again for the same term, you saw that it was like just immediate response because it was already in the cache. So that's pretty nice. And let's get to a single post. For example, you see we are loading post data and we were loading post comments. So it's already there, our information. Yeah, we have the info about the post and the list of comments. And now when I switch to the post list, I implemented a simple directive that will show us which post has already some data cached. So as I get to each of them and back, you see this is already cached. This is also already cached. And if I get back after some moment in there, yeah, you see the post information was already there because the stale time and garbage collection time was set to a bigger value because we don't expect the post to be like so often changed, right? But the comments were loading from the scratch because the garbage collection time was set to 5 seconds. So let's now get to comments. We can maybe even better see here. I will get to a great post, for example, then get back and just you see the green mark, but just let's wait this 5 seconds and it's gone, right? So it's not there at all at this point. But if I do this like more quickly and get back here, you see it's still there, and it was not reloaded, only once when I get for the first time. Okay, so then another thing, for example, let's remove some comment. Let's take this one, well explained. I will remove it. You see we are hitting the network, and as soon as it's successful, the comments collection is automatically refreshed for us, and the view gets updated. So yeah, it's we get it out of the box. What else can we also discuss here? Maybe let's get to the code, because I've also prepared one more example. Let's get to the post component. Yeah, and for this query, we just use this enabled configuration. Maybe I will get there just to show you. You see we have this enabled. We read it from the function parameter. So let me get back to the component. And initially, I set this show comments to true, but now let's switch it to false instead. And maybe I will remove the throttling so it's faster. Okay, it's there. And now I will throttle it again. Yeah, so right now you see we are loading the post data, but comments are not shown. I just put also like ngIf that if this is show comments is false, I just show the button. So only when I click it now, the query gets enabled and our data gets fetched. So yeah, so that's an example of the enabled flag. And when it comes to the DevTools, when I was switching between all of these use cases, you can notice that these things are really changing here. So for example, you see this blue color, it indicated that it was fetching. Now it's fresh. After a couple of seconds, it will get stale according to our configuration. Yeah, you can see it now. Yeah, for example, another thing we can show, it's the offline mode. So if we switch to comments now, let me clear the network tab. I will switch to comments. You will see this query is paused at this moment and no request is fired. As I told you, it monitors the network state as well for you. And when I switch back to the online state, they get fetched immediately. And also, just another example, when I switch to maybe let me clear that, to another card, and I get back, you see they are also refetched in this scenario. Okay, so I guess that would be enough for now. And that's basically it. And that's all I had for today. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Chris. But before we let you go, let's first check whether there are some questions. So maybe here on site first. That's the one. Okay. So,
Okay. Do we have any questions?
So here is the question.
Well, thanks. My name is Alex. I'm a bit Angular dinosaur working on version 14. And my very first question, how do you think, how hard is it to implement this library into existing application?
I would say it's very, very easy, to be honest. It's much easier than, let's say, any other state management library I can think of. Maybe the one that I also mentioned in the intro, the Signal store is also quite easy. But this one is really like, as I showed you, you just need to provide this query client once in your application config. Then you can just inject query in any component you want, and that's it. And what's really important, it doesn't have to be implemented for every component, right? You can just do it in like a single one when you see really a good use case for this one, and you are good to go. So it's really simple, I would say.
Also, repeat maybe the question. If
Yeah, sorry. So the question was for the people that are listening to us online. The question was how hard it is to implement, to start using and to implement Angular query in existing application.
Okay, thank you. So are there some other questions? Okay.
Does it support server transfer state and server-side rendering?
Okay, so the question was if it supports server-side rendering and transfer state. So to be honest, that's why one of the things I have on my list to verify, because I haven't played with SSR and query and Angular query yet, but I was already thinking about this, and I believe it does, because basically if you are using HTTP client as your query function, then you should be good to go, right? Because the state of the HTTP calls will be preserved between the server and client. But also Angular query, it also has a little bit better support for SSR on React, because as we know, it's there for years already. But there is also a possibility, even if you don't use HTTP client, to kind of serialize the state of Angular query on the server side and restore it on the client side. So even without HTTP client, you should still be able to achieve this in Angular. Of course, it requires some testing of the edge cases and so on, but basically it should be working.
Okay, thank you. So some other questions?
So thanks very much for this talk. I would like to ask if there is something to consider if we are using the new deferred use API and task query. I don't know if there's anything.
I think not really, because probably the use case you are thinking of, if sorry, the question was, I need to repeat it, if there is anything special we need to do when using Angular query with the defer block. So basically, I think not. So as soon as our defer block component will be instantiated, then if it has some inject queries calls inside, basically it will work the same as every other component, like, you know, instantiated through the router or like ngif or whatever. So there is no difference from the Angular query point of view. Tam jeszcze stół na tkaniec.
Can we somehow download the repo you showed to us?
Yeah, right now it's not yet available, but I will put this into GitHub, and I will post the link on my Twitter and LinkedIn, so you will be able to access it afterwards.
We can also add it to the chat by the end of the
stream, I can push it in the meantime.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, so we are done with the questions on site. There are some other questions online, so let's start with the first one for Motadi, and it's whether we can inject this service into the resolvers and use them there to fetch the data.
Not really, I would say, because the thing with resolvers is they also reside on the level of the injector when they are used in. So if you put them in the router configuration, they will be attached to the environment injectors. So this is very similar to the example I showed you with the injected in root service. So that's not the best idea. But if you would like to trigger the query, and also you will not have like access to this data like via this inject query then in the component. Although like anyway you have to inject it there for the like second time. But what you can do, you can inject your query client to your resolver, and just call prefetch, specifying the keys you would like to prefetch for your component. And that's basically probably the use case that the person asking had in mind. So it's like when you hit the resolver, you just fetch the data and you get it. Of course, you can also implement some scenarios if you really want this to also get the data back in the resolver and use it there. But yeah, basically that's it. And also you will lose a lot of the goodies, because when you are loading something in the resolver, you are not able to get to the component yet. And for example, show the user the loading state, right? So the user experience suffers. So basically, resolvers in general for such cases are not the best user experience you can achieve. You can also do this in the component.
So this possibility you said is like hit the endpoint, fetch the data, set some specific cache time, and then hit it once more in the component, and you get immediately data because you hit it a while ago.
Yeah, so it's like you just did it just like half a second earlier or whatever, right?
Okay, thank you. So we have another question, whether there are some red flags in terms of using it in the project.
As I said, it's still experimental. And while I told you it's basically because of the fact that it's a part of this Tanstack query repository, and yeah, that's the main reason. Still, some scenarios like this SSR is not yet tested. As I said, probably it will be working. I've also seen some notes from the author of the library that he has to do some work also in this area to test this and so on. So yeah, you should be careful in general, but with the typical scenarios, I would say no. And maybe the only thing I can think of, if you have really data-rich application and you use the cache very extensively and you specify a very long garbage collection time, you can end up that your application is consuming more and more memory, right? Because this data needs to live somewhere, right? We need to keep it in the memory, in the cache, so it also costs something. So if you fetch a lot of data and save it for a long time, you can have pretty high memory usage.
Okay, so we will continue with two more questions. So the first one is, what is actually this cache, whether that's the normal browser cache or where this data is located?
Basically, as far as I know, it's just located in the memory, and it's like the internal implementation of Angular queries, so it's not like very specific.
And what is the pros of that approach in comparing to NGRX, and maybe especially the NGRX signal store right now?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it can be really discussed much broader. But basically, the purpose of this library, as I told you, it just focuses on fetching the server state and nothing less, nothing more, right? So you should mainly use this for that kind of things. While you can achieve some entity management and so on in Signal Store, you will not get this caching and so on by default. So basically, these are two different use cases. Of course, you can achieve that with both NGRX store or Signal Store, but you will need a lot more code to that. And as you saw, these components were really lean, 3 lines of code just to inject queries, and that's it. You have already all of the goodies I showed you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So we'll finish with that one. So let's make, again, an applause for Christoph.
Thank you very much.
Muszę iść chyba jeszcze zapowiedzieć, tak? Tylko tamtym mikrofonem. Który w końcu mam używać? Okay, so wyłączyłeś, Krzysiek? Okay, so before we go to the 10 minutes break, because following each talk, we'll have the 10 minutes break. For those people who are online, I would like to invite you to the our Discord, which we have on the Angular. There is a specific Angular.love channel when we can, in this break, also networking during this, and also post-event, we will be there. So people from Angular.love will be there. So hopefully a lot of you who are online with us will also join on the Discord. Right now we'll have 10 minutes break, but before I let you go, I would like to remind you about our upcoming events. So at the June 11, we'll have the workshop, which will be webinar itself. It will be webinar conducted by myself about the Angular performance, how the new changes introduced recently to the Angular can affect our performance, how we can affect our performance by the good image optimization, especially at the mobile devices. So I strongly encourage you to join me. And also at the 18th of June, we have the third meetup from our Angular Spring Camp series, and the last one. This one will be online. So we will be very happy if you will be with us there. And right now we can go to the 10 minutes break, and then we'll continue with Luca. Okay, so we are back after our short break, and let me introduce our guest from Italy, Luca Del Puppo. He's the GDE in web technologies. So let's make the warm welcome for him, guys. So Luca will talk about the NX. So Luca, without taking more time, the stage is yours, and good luck.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. I can stay here. Okay, for the camp? Perfect. So first of all, thank you to everyone. First, thank you to the Angular.love for this fantastic community. It's the first time that I can see too many people for just a meetup, so it's fantastic. And I have a question for you. How many of you already know or use NX? You can? Okay, perfect. Not for the people. Okay. How many of you already know Angular? Okay, so the first part maybe it's a bit boring for the senior people, but I have to do also this part. So if you don't know me, I'm Luca Del Puppo, but you can call me Puppo just because only my mother called me Luca. So this is the true story. And I'm a senior software developer in Nearform, and I love JavaScript and TypeScript. I'm a lover of this. And I try also to run my YouTube channel. So if you want to follow me, then you can find my channel. And I also try to write something about technology. In my free time, I also love to do sport like running, hiking, and I love animals. So let's start from here. What is NX? So if you open the website, this is the definition. NX is a build system with built-in tooling and advanced CI capability. So I want to focus on the highlight terms. Yes, the first one, it worked very well in the CI, and it's worked with monorepo, but not only in monorepo, okay? And if you want to scale in reality, you have to pay. I'm honest, if you want to pay if you want to scale your CI, you have to pay the NX Cloud subscription. It's the only way. But you can achieve some good result if you pay attention on how you structure your code base. So let's start from the highlighted task. So it's a build system. At the end, NX is just a simple CLI that do stuff for you, okay, and have a lot of configuration that help you to build your application. Then built-in tool. Out of the box, you can install plugin inside of your workspace, and you can scaffold your application or library. So you just need to use a simple NX command to create an Angular application, or a simple NX command to create a library for Angular. You can enforce the module boundary using a ESLint and a module built by the NX team. You can enforce the dependency on your application. And maybe you can prevent that another developer from the cart reference your library for the, I don't know, for the product list or stuff like this. And the other cool things is that you can
automatic update the workspace. It's not always for free, but most of the time you just need to run a simple script. Advanced CI capability. This is the payment part of NX, okay? So basically, if you want to scale all your project also in the CI, the only way in this moment is to pay the subscription in the NX cloud. And as you can see later, the result is that you can build everything. You can test in your local machine. And if the code doesn't change, in the CI, you can replicate the same result without rebuild or retest everything, because NX know the hash of your file in your workspace. And if the hash are the same, basically it is able to get the result directly from the cache. Okay, under the hood, NX is just a simple CLI with many and many commands. I think it's impossible to know how many commands there are in NX, but there is a fantastic NX console extension that you can install in your VS Code or in WebStorm if you want. And using this extension, you can run directly the command from your editor. Okay, so let's start from what NX can do for us. Okay, first, run task. It's a fantastic task runner. Okay, you can say, okay, run this, and it can run it without any problem. You can also decide to run different commands in parallel if you want. It's able to do all this stuff. It's like my mother when does the housework, basically. Then it's a fantastic cache. It's fantastic to cache the result of the task. So what happens when you run a task? If you configure NX in the right way, you can say to NX, okay, I want to run this task, and NX for you check the hash of the version, different kind of stuff, the version, the file, and stuff like this, and save the result using this hash. In this case, if you, for instance, if you run the test for a specific library now, and you try to run again the test after 1 hour, but your code hasn't changed in the meanwhile, NX keep the results directly from the cache. And you don't have to waste time for the test or for the build or stuff like this. Imagine this scaling to different laptops of all the people in the company. And you can think on how many time you can prevent to waste to the building time, for the testing time, and stuff like this. If, for instance, if your teammate in the other side of the office has already built the version with that hash, you just need to run the test, run the script, and actually keep the cache from the remote, keep it in your local environment, and give you the result directly. Okay, fantastic. Then this is the fantastic feature that allow you to try to scale your workspace also if you don't want to pay the subscription. Okay. The affected code means that NX is able to understand if you split your workspace in the right way. Okay, it's able to understand what you have changed and the code affected by this change. So imagine you have an application, okay? It's a B2B commerce, okay? And you have different modules. Module is a cart, another is the homepage, another is the product. And you want to fix a bug just in the cart module, okay? You change, you fix the problem in the cart module and run again the build. NX, it's able to understand that only the cart has changed, and it's run the build just for, in this case, the cart module and the application. And they keep the result of the rest of the module from the cache. This is fantastic because if you have a monorepo with different applications, and you have many applications inside of this monorepo, if you split in the right way the code base, you can release just the affected application at the end. Imagine you have a big monorepo with different micro front-end application with a shell, okay, and you need to release just the cart module. You can retest and run the CI just for the cart and not for all the projects. Then this is the other cherry on top of NX, the NX graph. What is this? Is just a simple web application. I think is built with React. Boo. Okay. But this application helps you to see how you are structured your application. Basically, each block is an application or a library or whatever you want. And the arrow is the relation between the module. So in this way, you have a sorting of draw of your workspace. And you can understand which module depends on the other. And maybe you can also take a look to it every time or every month and understand if you have I don't know, a bigger module that have too much stuff and you want to split it, or maybe you are splitting too much or stuff like this. Okay, this is fantastic because you have just a picture of all your workspace at the end. And there are other cool features, but I cannot take all the evening to talk about NX. But the first one is the automated update. As already said before, just a simple NX migrate command can upgrade all your workspace from, I don't know, from the NX version 70 to 18 and stuff like this. This means, after I have another slide, but how many of you are stuck in a specific version of Angular because the business doesn't have the time to upgrade the framework? Only you. You are lucky. You are unlucky. Or you are lucky. By the way, using NX, just using a simple command, you can upgrade it. Then the module boundaries, it's fantastic. They are working on this cool feature, NX release. It's on preview in this moment. But basically, with NX release, if you follow the commit, conventional commit, they are able to understand how to upgrade your version and how to upgrade your workspace. In this case, you just need to run NX release and it able to understand all the commits and upgrade the version for you. NX replay is the part in the cloud and the part of the cache. Okay, it's a middleware that basically allow you to scale your workspace if you are using the cache or the NX cloud. And then you have the NX agent. Okay, there is also another cool feature in NX Cloud that they are trying to ship, and it's a sort of reliability of the CI if you have flaky test. Okay, if you start to have a lot of if you start to have a test that on each CI, every time you run the CI fail, you can mark it as flaky. Okay, and what happened is this: if you mark this test as flaky, NX will run the CI and have as an error from that test. If the test is in the flaky test list, try to rerun again this test for different time, just to prevent that your CI fail just for a flaky test. Okay, and this is fantastic. I don't know. I also watch a video. Seems that they are trying to also understand if a test it's flaky because failed many times, and try to flag directly the test for you. So as you can imagine, this can prevent you to open GitHub, see the fucking CI failed, and say, okay, I have to rerun again this CI. In this way, you can just scale and ask to NX to do the job for you. Okay, but who can run with NX? Because yes, I know you are all Angular developer, but NX work with different technology. So if you need to have a monorepo with different technology, you can do this. In particular, you can have Angular, a simple web component application, React, and Next.js directly in the same monorepo. Okay. My suggestion is decide which is the framework that you want to use and follow this path. Don't mix many different library, but you can have different framework inside of the same monorepo. And if you have a backend in Node.js, you can also have it inside of the monorepo. So you can have Fastify, Express, Nest.js, or whatever you want. You can handle it inside of the monorepo. This could be sometimes helpful when maybe you want to share the DTO between the backend and the frontend. Okay, you can create a shared library between the two sides, and in this way you can have all the stuff inside of the same repo, and then start to work in the backend and in the frontend. If you have a Java developer in your company, in the last release, they also ship a new plugin for Gradle. So you can use Gradle, but you can also use C# if you want, or PHP. I hope the people doesn't work with PHP, but there are some crazy people in the world. Okay, when we talk about NX, basically we have to talk about three kind of style of project that we can have. So the first one is the standalone apps. So sometimes you don't need to have a monorepo, but you want a sort of modular and extensible application. You can do everything you want with NX just with a simple standalone application. It's a simple application that have an application and different library, okay? And you can have all the benefit of NX because you can create the library, the buildable library, and at the end you can scale also this small part using NX. Then the other is package-based repo. This is when basically you have a repo like the Angular repo, where you have the packages folder with inside different library that you want to release with a single package for an NPM registry and stuff like this. And the last one is the integrated repos. This is the we can think about integrated repo, the style to ship application in the NX style, okay? And how you can choose one of them. Basically, if you have just an application and you don't know if you have to scale in the future with a monorepo, you can start from the standalone application. It's similar, okay, to the Angular CLI application. It's not so different. The difference stand in the possibility to split your code base in different modules. What basically you, if you are a good developer, what you do in your Angular application is to split the application using folder. In this kind of style, you can split in folder, but the folder is just another project for NX, and you can build it and maybe use the affected feature for the CI, or doesn't rerun again the task if you already have the result in your local environment and stuff like this. Package-based repo. Okay, this is the solution when you already have a monorepo, and you need to scale or speed up your CI or your task. Okay, basically this is when you are building, I don't know, a open source project that has different library to ship, and you want to handle it inside of the monorepo, you can do this. For instance, the monorepo, I think the monorepo for Angular query contains different projects. If they want, they can integrate NX and scale the monorepo and speed up the task if they want. And the last one, that is the style that I want to focus today, is the integrated repos. So basically, what is the integrated repo? If you have the time, you can read everything, but I can try to simplify the stuff. At the end, when you start to create an application, sometimes you don't have time to think too much to the structure, how to scale it, and how can prevent it to be stuck in the future. Okay. If you decide to use integrated repo, basically you trust in the NX team at the end, and you think, okay, they already have the problem before me, and they already have the solution. As you can imagine, the solution it's good for the 80% of the cases, not for all the cases. But if you think this is your case, you can just start using integrated repo. And at the end, NX doesn't care about how style do you want to choose. It works in all this kind of style. You just need to decide which is the best for you and start to use NX. Okay, so now I want to speak about the integrated repo. So if you start to work with the integrated repo, you have to keep in mind just some rules at the end. The first one, there are three kinds of actors in the integrated repo, and the first one is the application. Okay, basically when I talk about integrated repo, I talk about monorepo. Okay, so you can have different applications, and the application is just a sort of container of or the glue of your library. So basically, it's just the way to show or to integrate Angular in the root or stuff like this. Okay, you don't have to put business logic inside of the application. It's just the structure of your routing or stuff like this. Okay, you can have two kinds of application. The first one is the real application. So the real application is just an Angular application, a React application, or stuff like this, okay? The framework application at the end. And then you have also the end-to-end application. Integrated in NX, there are Playwright and Cypress out of the box. You don't have to do nothing. You just need to call the script, install Playwright, and create the end-to-end application with Playwright for this product, for this application, and NX create the application for you. Okay, this is what I mean when they already do the stuff for you if you want. Then there are the libraries. Okay, this is the crucial part of the repo. If you split your monorepo in the best way using library, you can also try to improve the CI and scale your application on without paying the subscription at the end. Okay. Basically, inside of the library, you have the business logic of your application or utilities. So, for instance, utility that you want to share all around all the monorepo, or the business domain for the card, the business domain for the product list, and stuff like this. You can have three kinds of library in NX. Okay, the first one is the workspace. The workspace is a simple TypeScript library at the end. Okay, you cannot build this kind of library, so it's just a sort of path in TypeScript. Okay, and you can export all the features that you want using the index.ts file. And you can import using the simple path using TypeScript. Okay. Then you can create a buildable library. So buildable library are a workspace library, but that can produce an artifact. So you can have the result in the dist folder. Okay. And it's important to have the dist file, because this means that you can cache that library. So you can build it one time and maybe use it for many other applications that you have in your workspace. And the last one, if you want, there are also publishable applications, and the publishable are buildable applications that you can release in a simple npm registry at the end. You can release whatever you want, npm, GitHub, or GitLab. It's not a problem of the registry, but what do you want? Ah, fuck. Okay. And okay, this is another simple rule that you have to keep in mind when you work with NX. This is how you have to structure your workspace at the end. So 20% of the code should be in the application, inside of the application, and 80% inside of the library. So if you follow this rule, at the end you can scale your workspace without any problem. Yes, the problem is if you have 80% of the code in just one library, it's a problem at the end, okay? So you have also to split the code base in the right way. And at the end, this is the result for you. So the usual way using Angular, using the folder, and using library with NX. And after that, it's time to talk about some other cool feature that can help you to understand if you are scaling your workspace in the right way. And is the NX graph. And in the NX graph now you can also see the task if you want. So if you have a task that depend on another task and stuff like this. So this is the difficult command to show the graph in your browser. You can run NX graph and NX produce for you a web application. Okay, you can have the result like this one, where you have an e-commerce application with the end-to-end application, the e-commerce application, and the cart, the home, and the product module, the UTs format, and the UI library in this case. Okay, it's important to use the graph to understand if you are splitting your workspace in the right way. But you can also see the affected library by your changes. As you can see here, this work, yeah, maybe. This is red, this is red, and this is red, okay? In this example, I change just the UI library. And as you can see, the UI library, the e-commerce application depend on the e-commerce application depend on the UI library, and the e-commerce end-to-end application depend on e-commerce. And next, it's able to understand the affected code by your changes. And if you try to, for instance, run in this situation the test for all the workspace, NX run for the affected code, NX run the code the test just for the UI, the e-commerce application, and the e-commerce end-to-end application. As you can imagine, this can help you to prevent to spend time to wait also the test for the card, the home, the product. I haven't changed it because I have to test it again. Okay, this is the idea under the hood. Okay, and it helps to monitor also the code base. Automated update. If you are, we are lucky with Angular CLI because also Angular provides us a way to update our application, but is the same here. The difference here is this. NX can provide you, I don't know, the test using Jest or Vitest if you want, okay? Not for Angular, but for the other, you can also use Vitest if you want. And ESLint and the NX config. If you try to run NX migrate, okay, what happened? After the migrate, you have to put the version. You can also use latest if you want to upgrade to the latest. If you run this command, at the end, you will have the package.json updated with the new version of all the plugins of NX that are present in your workspace. If there are some changes in the Jest configuration, in the ESLint configuration, or in the NX file, hit update them for you. The same is for the breaking change of the code. So if Angular has, I don't know, release a new version, and the idea is to move from module and standalone component, they have the migration for you if you want. This is the idea. So the idea is that you can run just a script and wait for the result. At the end, in the majority of the time that I use it, I was lucky and it works. Okay, so now after this all word, it's time to show something in the code. So let me move and check the setup. Okay. First of all, can you see the code also in the back? Wait. Can you see the code also in the back of the room? Perfect. Okay, let's start from the beautiful application. Just to let you know what there is in this repo. So this is a simple application built using NX and show a beautiful e-commerce application with a beautiful UI, as you can see. At the end, the application is pretty simple. There is a shell outside, a simple navbar here that is a simple component shared by a shared library. And each module, the home, the product, and the car are a specific application, okay, and are a specific micro front end at the end. So this is the home, this is the product with some strange product from an API, and the cart. As you can see, it's not a rocket science, but it's just to have an idea of what we can do. If you start to work with an action, let me go here. I want to hide this one. Okay. The first important part is the NX.json file. Okay. Inside of this file, you can configure your monorepo. As you can see, there is a schema already provided by the NX team. Okay. Some strange configuration about ESLint, tsconfig, stuff like this. And then the target is the important part. The target is the script, at the end is the script that you can run. As you can see here, there is the first one is the Angular dev kit build Angular library that can be cached. You can decide if you want to cache or not a target at the end. And depend of this task at the end. The same is for the ESLint, in this case, the Jest and the other plugin that I already set up in this monorepo. To set up this stuff, basically what I did is just install the NX Angular library and say, okay, I need to create an application for Angular. It's just a matter of stuff that you can do using this NX Cloud. Where is NX? Where are you? This is the extension. You can install the dependency, and then you can say, okay, I want to generate an application with Angular, or just I want to create a library with Angular. When you create the first application or the first library, NX create the stuff for you in the NX JSON file. After that, the second part is the second important part in NX is the project JSON. So let's start from the shell, and then I go dive in the rest of the code base. So when you create a project, you need to also to have the project JSON file. This file contains all the targets and the configuration for your project. In this case, the name of the shell is the container, the orchestrator of the application. And in this case, we can set up a prefix for the Angular application. This project is an application, as you can see, the sort of root source. We can also define the tags. The tags are important if you want to enforce the module boundary. In this case, I use scope shell and type shell, okay, because this is a particular project. But at the end, it's important to create two different kinds of tags, the scope tags and the type tags, okay. The scope is related to the business logic, and the types, it's related to the technical part, okay. I'll go to the ESLint file, the generic ESLint file, just to enforce the idea of NX, okay, the module boundary. What you can do if you work with the tags and enforce the module boundary is this. Basically, you can create a sort of rule, and you can decide which kind of tags can depend on another. How? Basically, as you can see here, you can decide, okay, I have a source tag, in this case, type end-to-end. This application can depend on just on the type shell application or a type app, okay? Let's move to the shell, for instance. The shell can depend on the type app or the UI or the utils. And for instance, let me go here just to have a better example. The UI is a simple library that contains just Angular component for the UI. Basically, you can build your design system, okay? Inside of the design system, you have just Angular component without logic. In this case, if you are building a type UI, you can depend just on another UI library if you want, or another utility type. Maybe you have something to format the code base or stuff like this. You can just depend on this kind of stuff. It's important also to have the data access layer, in my opinion, because I love to split all the requests from the business logic of the application at the end. Then you have the scope, okay? The scope depends on the business of your application. You have, basically, I have always a shared scope, because maybe I need to have a design system that can be shared in all the workspace. And then, for instance, in this case, I create a scope for the home, a scope for the product, a scope for the car. And as you can see, the scope share can depend on other scope share library. The same is for the scope home can depend on other scope share library or other scope home library, and the same is for the product and the car at the end. Okay, using NX, so we can enforce the module boundary at the end. So this means that I cannot import a library in the product inside of a library tagged as a cart, for instance, or I cannot import the app inside of the data access type, for instance. Okay, let's move to how I structure the workspace in the last time. Okay, let me go here. Okay, when I start to work with an action and the integrated monorepo, one of the suggestion that the team made for us was to split the workspace in apps and a simple application, a simple folder apps that have all the application inside, and another simple folder libs that contain all the library of all the monorepo. Now you can also be less strict if you want, and you can create different folder if you want. What I love to do is to create a folder for each boundaries of the application. So what does it mean? In this case, I have the cart boundaries, and inside of the cart, I have the cart application and all the library of the cart. The same is for the product, for instance. In this case, I have the product application and the services. The services in this case is a simple library that exposes the services for call an API, pretty simple. And using this approach, you can also configure the code owner, the plugin for GitHub or GitLab. And in this way, you can also decide which team is in charge of the folder. So if you open a PR, okay, in this folder, in the product folder, only the team responsible for this folder can, it's not can, but need to review the PR at the end. So at the end, what does NX for us? So for instance, the shell here is pretty simple. It's a simple model federation application with Angular and NX. This application just import the federated module. Okay, in this case, there is just a simple product path, a cart path, and the home path that import the product federated application, the cart federated application, and nothing else. I have also the Playwright application to test everything if you want. Then, if I go to the product, just to have an idea of what we can do. This is the simple configuration to create a remote in module federation with an X. Okay, you just need to decide which is the name of the expose module and expose the entry module at the end. Using this path, if you want to get this federated module, you can get it from the shell, for instance. The other part here is the services. So the services is, as you can see, is a library, and the project is set up with the project type library in this case, and has the tag in this case scope product and type data access. As you can see, in this case, I have the target build, the target test, and the target lint. You can also add your custom target if you want, or you can also create the lint fix just to call another. You can just copy and paste this and maybe put fix here if you want, and pass the parameter fix if you want. This is just the common configuration exposed by the NX team. Okay, and now I want to show this part. Let me go here. Let's stop this. Clear. So if I run npx nx run many task build,
what I can do here is I want to run everything in this project. As you can see here, I have a sort of recap. So utis build as kept from the cache. The same for the service build, and the same is the same for the UI, but not the same for the application at the end. All the cache in your local environment is inside of this folder .nx. If I kill it and I run again, as you can see, now everything must be rebuilt. Okay. So the key point of NX is just this folder. But if I run again, as you can see, now I can keep again the data from the cache. What you can do, for instance, the card, the home, and the shell are not cached. What you can do is just go to NX console. Here, the build for this part is this one, Angular Webpack browser. If you put cache through here, you can enable the cache also for this part. So if I run this again, it rebuild the stuff from the cache. Why? Yeah, it's build again, and now it's get everything from the cache. As you can see, before was 7 seconds. Now it's 78 milliseconds. Image this in an application that doesn't do just an hello world with model federation, and you can imagine the different time that you don't have to spend to wait the CI or the test or the task in your workspace. You can do the same with the test. As you can see here, I run the test. It run the test for each project, and at the end, if I run again, the result is this. The first one was 5 seconds. The second one is 240 milliseconds. Okay, how I can see the structure of my project? Just run an X graph. You can see the structure. Now, let me go here and put this here. So if you use this graph, you can see the relation between your model, and if you go on top of the arrow, you can see also the relation. In this case, the relation is inside of the rsc app.root file inside of the cart, inside of the shell application. The other cool stuff is this. Let me try to go to UI. And this is, for instance, I want to change, I don't know, the background. Okay. If I call the script, the next graph with the affected flag, NX produce a different result. As you can see, now everything is highlighted. I don't know the color, but what happened? Everything depends on this UI at the end. I think not this, but the problem is this one. Let me go here. Sorry, I have this one. Yeah. Okay, now I can see just the affected project by my changes. Okay, so I changed the UI, and NX is able to understand that. Okay, I have to. You can create a side effect just inside of the shell or inside of the shell and application. And I can use this affected also inside of the task. For instance, let me npx next run many / affected. Okay, now it's failing, but no plus, but this one. Okay, I don't know why it affected with addition. Demo God is with me, perfect. Let me go affected true. Okay. Okay, it already ran everything. Sorry. By the way, you can use the affected also inside of the project if you want when you run a task. And what should happen if you do the stuff in the right way is NX rerun the task just for the affected code. So in this case, run the test just for the UI, for the shell, and for the shell end-to-end application. And after that, I think I show everything. Yep. Let me close the talk with the presentation. Okay. I can stay here. So just to give you some pros and cons. So the pros of using NX are these. So you can have more control of your structure of your code base if you want, but you have to keep in mind that you have also to split your application in the right way. Then splitting, it's fantastic. I start to work with C# and using project helped me to split the project in different contexts and have the code inside of the right place and not to mix everything. Using NX, you can do this without any problem. Monorepo is not mandatory, so you can use it with monorepo, but at the end, you can also use the standalone application without any problem. And you can run the task only if in the affected code if you want. I haven't spoke about this, but you can also create your own plugin for NX if you want. And you can also change the configuration or create your custom configuration if you want. Cons, you have to study and understand how it works. The first time that I start to work with it, I was a bit confused, I'm honest. I spent one month in the repo to understand what happened inside of it before I understand how NX works. And last of the list, if you want to configure NX and you want to build your rule, you have to build it and you have to maintain it. Last stuff, NX is not the perfect solution for every project. Okay, you have to decide which is the perfect way for your company. For instance, you can decide to monorepo or polyrepo, because if you decide to go to monorepo, you have some stuff that you have to keep in mind. For instance, you cannot decide to upgrade the version of Angular just for your project, but you are upgrading the version for all the projects inside of the repo. If you want to upgrade a library, you are upgrading the library for all the project. So you have to keep this in mind before make the decision and go to NX at the end. And with this, this is the QR code for the presentation, but I also let the link for the Angular.love community, and the same is for the demo. You can find it in my GitHub repo if you want. These are my contact. If you want to ask me anything, X or Twitter are open, like LinkedIn. This is my YouTube channel and my Daptio account. And that's it. Thank you so much, and thank you to Angular.love.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucas. So this awesome presentation. So let's start with the question. Are there any questions? Don't be shy. Yeah, okay. So the first one is close to me, so I will manage.
Thank you for your slides and for the presentation. I want to add one small detail that Nextcloud is not only way to set up cloud for your project.
Okay, in reality, set up an Nextcloud is the easiest part. You just need to get to go in the website, connect the Nextcloud with your repository, and at the end you have an NX token inside of the NX.json file, and basically you have to set up the token in this way. You can have a read-only token in the NX.json file, and this help you to share the cache in all around the application and all the developer machine. And in the CI, you can set up another token in the environment of GitHub, for instance, and that's it. At the end, what you have to do is just run your CI and wait for the...
Yeah, it was not a question. I just wanted to add that NX always says that this is the only way to set up cloud. You need to pay money for NX and get this token. But there are some workaround. I want to tell maybe
to work around to don't pay for the. Okay. Sorry, I haven't.
Using like open source package. It's called NX Remote Cache, and you can set up your own cloud on your servers. For example, like on Azure, on Amazon storage, because there are some reasons like for this plugin. For example, some companies don't want to pay money for NX. It's the first reason. The second reason it's security, because a lot of companies don't want to share the data within a cloud. And for example, if someone wants to try to set up distributed cache, you can find open source plugin and it's remote cache custom and set up your own. But if you want to do this in your company, please firstly talk to information security department about this, because your artifacts will be transferred outside of your company. It's very important. I just wanted to add some workaround and tip for your slides.
But in reality, I haven't tried to work around about Nextcloud, but what I can give you is this. There is also an agent that you can install in your machine if you want. You have to pass through the NX team and pay the subscription, but basically you don't use the Nextcloud service, but you can put the agent in your own machine if you want, and at the end it's the same stuff. I know this because at the end also the NX team under the hood is a consultant company, okay, and work with a different kind of company that have the same problem that you already have described. At the end, they build this tool that is just NX cloud that you can run in your own machine, and you can put all the stuff in front of this machine.
Yeah. So for those people who are remote, like we had a awesome addition from our participant that also there are some plugins you can use instead of using NX Cloud. And also, Luca, we today talk about this one, like that there is possibility of creating your own middleware in scope of the NX and like caching the particular output from execution of the lint test and creating your own cloud if you will have enough knowledge. Yeah, so we already know that there is someone who had enough knowledge and just created the package. So thank you for this addition. Let's move to the next question because I saw there were people with their hands up. So yeah, at the end somewhere there was someone with
one here. Yeah.
Yep. Ah, okay.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And what are the rules when you don't should use NX? Because all the presentation when you should it, but there are some pitfalls that you say how to decide when you should or should not use it.
Let me repeat. The question is when you don't want to use NX at the end, what do you follow to do this? At the end, the answer is just one. When I cannot use NX, I use Angular CLI at the end, and the structure of the project exposed.
No, I mean, if you already have something like monorepo, yes, and you want to decide, okay, do I want to move to NX, or should I don't move it because of the reasons? Yes.
Okay. In that case, we are talking in generic, without Angular. Okay. Basically, depend on different stuff. For instance, they want to pay or they don't want to pay. Do we want, if you already have a monorepo, it's enough to have the open source part for us for improve the speed in the local environment or not. If not, could be possible to move in a polyrepo. This can help us to split the application in the same way and have, I don't know, a better CI time or stuff like this. Then it's a difficult question at the end because depend on the context sometimes. What I can give you as feedback is NX is not always the perfect solution for you, okay? It's the solution for some specific scenarios sometimes. And maybe you have also to decide which are the trade-off for you. For instance, it's okay for me to have just the open source part, or without the NX Cloud, I cannot release anything or stuff like this. There are a sort of lever that you have to put in the table and decide which is important for the project in that way. Also, if you have a lot of newbie work with, I noticed that with a lot of newbie or junior people work with NX, it's difficult because you have a big workspace at the end, and they are worried on what they can touch, and maybe I can touch this because it's under another team or stuff like this. So yeah, and if your team is composed just by 2 people, I think you don't have to think about NX.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have some other questions? Okay, so I also didn't saw anything on the chat. So thank you, Luca.
Thank you too.
Let's make Yeah, so based on the timeline, we decided to do not make this additional break right now. So for those who needs a short break, let's you take the break. But we immediately will start with a next presentation from Aristeidis. So it's about the Angular 18. So the thing that will happen within a days. So it will be awesome to have also great insight from the Google developer expert in Angular. So let's welcome the Aristeidis. Yeah, we will don't have the break. So again, let's welcome
Shall I start? Okay. Shall I start from the beginning? Natalia, shall I start from the beginning?
Yes.
From the beginning. So I need to thank again Mateusz. So hello everybody. Hello to our amazing audience in the live stream. My name is Aristeidis, but you can call me Aris if you want, because it is much easier to pronounce if you're not a native Greek, right? So today together, we're going to see what new features and updates we will have in the upcoming Angular 18 release, which is coming in some days or even hours. I hope the Angular team will not press the button right now, right? So first things first, some information about me. I live in Greece, in the second biggest island, which is called Evia. It is very near in the capital, about 1 hour by car. And I work as a web development team lead at a company called PlexEarth, where we develop web applications using Angular for the front end and Nest.js in the backend. Since 2020, I'm part of the Google Developer Experts program for the Angular framework, and also I'm the author of Learning Angular and Angular Projects books. Learning Angular is a book that is destined for beginners to the Angular framework that want to learn the basics and get started with Angular development. On the contrary, Angular Projects is a book which is a better fit for developers that have already some basic knowledge with Angular and want to dive deeper. For example, each chapter is a different project with Angular and another technology. For example, we have a chapter with Angular and NX, like Puppo said. And we have Angular with Electron, Angular with Ionic, and so on. The new edition of my Learning Angular book, the 5th edition, is now available to pre-order from the Amazon website. It is fully updated to Angular 18, even if Angular 18 is not released yet. Okay, I did some magic, right? Spoiler, yeah. And you can also scan the QR code on the slide or navigate to the link on the bottom to go to the Amazon link. There's also a flyer in front of you for the people that is here if you want to check it out. If you want to connect with me via social media, you can check my Google developer profile at g.dev/Aristeidis, where you will find all the social links in there. This isn't the first time that I give a talk about what's new in Angular X. Actually, my first time was in Angular Athens Meetup, when I did a talk about what's new in Angular 6. Hopefully, we don't have any developers in the audience that want to migrate from Angular 6 to Angular 18 directly, right? It will be challenging, though, if someone wants to do it. So the agenda of today's talk, we're going to see some updates on the following Angular areas. We will see what's new in tooling with Angular CLI and developer experience. What's coming up with the deferrable views API. What new APIs we will have in the Angular router. How content projection will be improved with Angular 18. Also, some new APIs in the Angular forms. And finally, we have some picks for the hydration part, which is very important in the latest versions of Angular, and the change and some improvements in the change detection mechanism of the framework. So let's get started with tooling and developer experience. We will see some updates on the Angular CLI and on the package dependencies that Angular needs in order to run. As with all major versions of the Angular framework, the TypeScript versions and the Node.js versions have been updated. In Angular 18, we will have TypeScript 5.4 and Node.js version 22. These will be the requirements. In Angular 18, we have also a new command, which is called ngdev. And this command is an alias for the ngserve command. And when we mean an alias, if you run your terminal and run ngdev, it will execute the ngserve command under the hood without any additional magic or something else. It's just an alias. The Angular team decided to create this alias so that the framework is aligned with other frameworks and tools that have also the same command for developing web applications. In Angular 18, we have also a new build system, which is under the Angular/build npm package. And this new package contains a small subset of the Angular CLI builders that are already beneath the Angular dev kit build-Angular npm package, which contains all the Angular CLI builders that we know so far. The real difference is that this new build system does not require Webpack under the hood. It works with ESBuild and Vite, which is the new build system and the bundling. Hopefully, we will see a migration from the Angular CLI team that will migrate your Angular.json file to the new build system so that you can develop your Angular 18 applications using the Angular build system. For the time being, the Karma runner requires the Webpack builder still. So if your unit tests are written with Karma and Jasmine, unfortunately, for the time being, you need to stick with the current Webpack builder. But the Angular CLI in version 18 will be smart enough to understand what you are doing. So if you are running your unit tests, it will use the Webpack-based builders under the hood. If you are developing your web application in development mode, then it will use the new Angular build system. So another improvement in the Angular CLI is concerned with project structure and with folder naming. The assets directory that we all know so far, it was traditionally used to keep static files, for example, icons, images, translation files, font files, and this directory has been renamed to public in Angular v18. So when you create a new Angular CLI 18 application, you will not get the old assets directory, but you will get the public one. And for the migrations also, I think they will have put a migration that changes the name. So if in your applications you have a custom tool, custom third-party tool, or a bash script that you use, which uses this assets directory, you will need to update it to the new naming after you upgrade to Angular 18. Another great news to the Angular 18 is that the deferred views API will become eventually stable. Wow. And all the APIs and methods from the deferred views will be stable, and we as developers will be very confident to use it. So just a refresher, deferred views API allows developers, Angular developers, to lazy load a component so that it improves the application performance and the core web vitals metrics inside our application. The developed views APIs consist of some basic building blocks, those blocks that we already have in the new control flow syntax. For the history, the control flow syntax was used to be able to reach the developed views implementation. The most basic building block is the defer block. The defer block indicates the content that will be lazy loaded when a certain condition occurs. For example, in this case, the app featured component will be loaded when it reaches the browser viewport. Of course, inside the defer block, we can pass additional parameters if we want. You can check out in the new Angular documentation website, Angular.dev, what other parameters you can pass. Additional to the defer block, we have also some other helper blocks, sub-blocks. For example, we have the placeholder block, which indicates what will be displayed on the screen before the deferred content starts loading. So as we see in the example, it will display an image HTML element and will also adjust the timing, and it will display it minimum 1 second. The placeholder block can accept other optional parameters. It's not only the minimum that we see here. We have also other parameters that you can check out in the official documentation website. A similar block to the placeholder is the loading block, which is used to display on the screen something while the deferred content is loading. For example, it is used to display a spinner or a loading indicator or a progress bar or some other message. And finally, we also have the error block, which is used when we want to display an error message or something or another content when the deferred content fails to load. So now let's see some improvements in the Angular Router API, and we will start with some updates on resolvers and guards. The code sample that you are going to see has been written with guards, but you can apply the same exactly technique to resolvers. So here we have a very simple guard, an authentication guard, which is of type canActivateFN. It's a canActivate guard. And inside the body of the guard, we inject 2 services. The first one is an authentication service, which is a custom service, and the second one is the well-known router service. So our guard, the business logic of the guard, checks the isLoggedIn property of the authentication service, and if it is true, it returns true. And the guard will allow the Angular application to continue the navigation. If it is false, then we call the navigate method from the router service. The navigate method actually tells Angular to perform a redirect to the path that is passed as a parameter to the navigate method. So in this case, we redirect to the root path of our application. An alternative solution to the navigate method is the parse URL method. The parse URL method actually returns a URL tree. And when a guard returns a URL tree, then it actually tells Angular to perform a redirection. And it can also pass the same parameters as before. One major disadvantage with this approach is that we cannot pass navigation extras while we do the actual navigation. And navigation extras is an options object where we can pass additional parameters that we want to be applied during the navigation. For example, we can set query parameters, we can set the skip location change property or the replace URL property. Thankfully, in Angular 18, we have a new API, which is called redirect command. The redirect command will allow us to use navigation extras inside the resolvers and guards. And we can import the redirect command from the Angular router npm package. So the previous code will transform to this one. We still have the parse URL method to just create the URL tree, and we keep its value into a local variable. So the guard now doesn't return a URL tree. Instead, it returns an instance of a redirect command. And in the constructor of the redirect command that we use, we pass 2 parameters. The first is the URL tree that we created before, and the second one is the actual navigation extras object that we want to pass. Another update in the Angular Router API is that we can modify some parts of the application of the route configuration of our application. Suppose that we have this routing configuration in our application. In this configuration, we have two route definition objects. The first one points to the products path, which activates a product list component. The second one points to an empty string path, which is the default path, as we know in Angular. And it doesn't activate any component, but instead it uses the redirect to property to redirect to the products path. So until now, we knew that the redirect to property accepts only a string. In Angular 18, the redirect to property will be able also to accept a function of type redirect function. And this redirect function is an ordinary arrow function that returns a subset of the activated route snapshot object, which is active at this point. So we can use this feature and add additional custom logic before making the actual redirection. So the previous code could be converted to that one, to this one. The redirect to property now, it's just an arrow function. The route object that we pass in the arrow function is an activated route snapshot object. We can do anything we want, custom logic, but at the end, we need to return the path where we want to redirect to. For example, in this case, we return the products path. So let's see some things about content projection and how we can create default content inside content projection slots. Okay, before Angular 18, suppose that we have two Angular components, right? A product card component and an app component. The product card component contains a div element with an ng content selector so that someone can use it, can consume it, and project some content. The app component now uses the product card component, but it doesn't project any content at all for some reason. So if we run this application, we will get an empty screen, as you see on the right-hand side of the screen. In Angular 18, we can add some default content that will be displayed if nothing is passed in the content, nothing is passed to be projected in the content. So with Angular 18, we can add inside the ng content selector any HTML content that we want, and this content will be displayed if the consumer of the component doesn't project any content. So in this example, we have added the text no product, and if the app component doesn't project any content, it will display the no product text at the application output. Of course, this feature can become more obvious how helpful it is if we think about select slots in content projection. For example, our product card component could have 3 ng content slots. The first one would be the header, for example, to display some additional information about the product. The main one would be the default one, the body, and the last one would be a footer, where we will have some actions that we could do in the product. So for these select slots, we could have additional fallback content. For example, we could display product title or product footer. Now, about Angular Forms, we have a new mechanism which is called Unified Control State Change Events mechanism that simplifies a lot the observables inside Angular Forms. Before Angular 18, if we wanted to get notified about when a status or a value of a form control or a form group changes, we need to subscribe to the appropriate observables, the status changes observable and the value changes observable, and perform our custom logic. So in Angular v18, these two observables have been combined to one observable, which is called the events observable. It is similar to the router events, if someone knows about that. So the events observable, when we subscribe to it, either on the level of the form control or the form group, we can get an object, the EVT object, and this object can be of type either status change event or value change event. So we can add custom logic inside the arrow function and differentiate between the instances of the EVT object. Of course, in this case, we also benefit from TypeScript. When we access the EVT object, TypeScript knows which instance is the EVT object, and it allows us to access either the status property or the value property according to the type of the EVT. But there isn't. We don't have only status change event and value change event supported in this mechanism. We also have new events. For example, we have the unified control state change mechanism supports the pristine change event, which is triggered when the pristine status of a form control over a form group changes. We have the touch change event, which is concerned with the touch status. And the latest addition is two events about forms. The form submitted event, which triggers when a form is submitted, and the form reset event, which is the event when the form is reset. So now about the hydration part, which is very important in Angular lately. In the hydration, we will see an update about as far as internationalization is concerned. In Angular 18, internationalization will be supported in hydration. So if you have an application that and you have implemented internationalization and you have some ITN blocks, with Angular 18, you will be able to hydrate those blocks when you use Angular SSR. You can try this feature using the with ITN support method from the Angular platform browser method, platform browser package, I'm sorry, and you pass the with ITN support method as a parameter to the provide client hydration method inside your application configuration file. Please be aware that this is currently in developer preview. So I would suggest to go and try it out if you have such an application and let us what you think. And finally, in the change detection area, we will see major improvements. So I would like to have a look, if it is visible for you, especially in the back. I would like to have a look on this code and tell me if you see something weird or strange with the code. As you see, I will explain you what is the code about. The code is part of a component that displays product details. It is actually an excerpt from my new book. And it displays the product title, it displays the price of the product, and it uses a currency pipe, and it also has a button to add the product to a shopping cart.
It's a problem with the price because if you change it and you have a push strategy, it will not calculate currency.
No, it's not the product price, but you were close. The actual problem is that if someone clicks the button, the add to cart button, it will call the add to cart method because it is bind to the click event. But because this event will bubble up, it will also call the add to cart method once more. So is it bad that we will call the add to cart method twice? What do you think? No? Anyone with yes, except me? Yes, okay. Yes, actually there will be a problem because change detection will also be triggered twice at the same time for the same method. And this can cause many problems. Of course, it depends also on the implementation of the method, but it is not very good for a performance scope of the application. So in Angular 18, we can disable this feature, this behavior, sorry, by using the provide change detection method from the Angular core npm package and setting the event coalescing property to true. This property, when set to true, it will prevent the bubble up of the event, and it will not call the same method more than once. For a new Angular CLI 18 applications, you get this feature for free because when you create the application, it will be there for you. And the final change in the final update in the change detection mechanism is the famous zoneless applications, like we saw in the first talk from Christoph. Now, traditionally, Angular uses Zone.js, a library, to trigger change detection inside the framework. And the usage of this library has some disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that it is almost 30 kilobytes. So when you ship the application, when you publish the application, it needs to download 30 kilobytes of JavaScript to the client. And this 30 kilobytes is just to monkey patch some browser events. And the Angular will run change detection according to this monkey patching. The problem is that it runs the change detection more, it might, because it's not very sure, it might run change detection more often than needed. So this will cause some performance problems in the application. And the final disadvantage is that it is very hard to debug. I think you remember some error log messages back in Angular 16, where the console displayed some errors from Zone.js along with your message from the application, and it wasn't very easy to differentiate what really happened in your application code. Thankfully, the Angular team has changed that, and their messages have become more simple. But again, Zone.js is hard to debug by itself. So what we can do, we can use a new method, which is called provide experimental zoneless change detection method from the Angular core npm package, and we can add it to the provider's array of our application configuration. And what this method does is it does not include Zone.js inside our application. So very briefly, how zoneless applications work. They don't use Zone.js to trigger change detection. Instead, they use standard Angular APIs, which are stable and controllable from the framework, like mark for check from the change detector ref, or some signals API that interact with the template. You can use experimental zoneless support inside your unit tests if you use the testbed class, so that you can match your unit tests with the real production environment. And finally, zoneless does not require using signals. Initially, the Angular team designed signals so that it can reach a zoneless environment in Angular applications at some point. But in the meantime, they show that they can achieve that without using signals. So you can create zoneless applications experimentally without having signals. But it is recommended to use signals in Angular applications. So to recap, what are some key takeaways from this talk? First of all, Angular 18 will bring some improved ergonomics as far as Angular CLI is concerned, and our development packages. We will see some improved performance optimizations by making the deferred views API stable, or with the zoneless applications. It will have also some simpler APIs, as we saw in the Angular forms, in the Angular router, and in the content projection. And last but not least, when Angular 18 is released in a couple of days, I would suggest you to run ng update and update your Angular applications to Angular 18. And that's all for me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, wait a second. Okay, thank you, Aris. So let's start with the Q&A. Are there any questions? So give us wait a second.
You showed this example with I can say more loudly, no problem. Okay, you presented this example when you had this big event called twice, and this new function that was stop this foresting. Yes, before we could use event stop propagation or something like this and achieve same result manually. So now, for example, if you want to have backward compatibility behavior, make this bubble, to make this function call twice, to make this tick call twice, how could you do this?
Okay, the question is if we can achieve backwards compatibility when using event coalescing with provide Zone.js detection. The answer is yes, you can do it by setting the event coalescing property to false. You will have the same behavior as before. Sorry? Yes, it is for all. This event coalescing, it is applied to all the applications.
So you have to every part, every single piece of code manually code again. For example, to move, because when you have this event stop propagation, you have to delete this and use this new feature, yes?
As far as I know, you can't have a hybrid operation of this event coalescing property.
Okay,
yeah. As far as I know, it is not doable right now, but in the future, maybe, who knows, they will release something that ensures that. But they have been based on some metrics and other Angular applications, and they have released this feature. You're welcome.
Are there any questions? So let me take up the chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I have a small list of small questions, yes. First of all, you mentioned renaming assets to public, yes. Can we rename it in some other way? Because public it's like popular word. I mean, it can be used in projects already.
Yeah, the question was if we can choose another name for the public directory in Angular 18. No, it is called public. There isn't such a feature right now. You don't have this capability, but I suggest that, if I'm not mistaken, you can change the assets name already in the Angular.json file. I'm not entirely sure. But if you have this capability in the Angular.json file, I guess you can adjust it from there. But the default one, you can't change the default one when you create a new Angular CLI application.
I see. Okay, and the second question about navigation. Yes, you mentioned that we now have to put the parameters to keep navigation. What about the state? If it was a special key in navigation extras, does it still work?
The question was if the state property in the navigation extras still works with the redirect command. Yes, if it is in the navigation extras, it still works, no problem.
And probably last one, redirect to function. Yes, it will apply. It will have also parameter with router. Yes. Can it be asynchronous or can and accept another parameter? Because my first thought was when you have to make some custom function to redirect somewhere, yes, probably you need some additional information to decide, let's say.
Yeah. So the question was if the direct function in the redirect to property can be asynchronous or not. I checked the Angular documentation before, and I saw an example with synchronous logic. So I'm not sure about that if it can be, but in the Angular.dev, in the new Angular.dev, which will become stable also with Angular 18, it will have all the information about this redirect to function. And the parameter that is inside, it's just a small subset of the activated route snapshot at this point of time. You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we don't have more on site. There are some on the online, like, give me a second. How does change detection will work without the zone and without the signals? Because you said it's this new zoneless will work without the signals as well. Probably that's the question I get.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so how change detection will work without the zone and signals? That's the question.
The Angular team will make sure that your application works even if you don't use Zone.js and signals. Signals is not required for zoneless applications. It's not obligatory to use signals. So if you use, for example, observables, it will still work as it is now.
And also, same person is asking whether it will be developer preview or stable, as in the version 18, this feature.
The zoneless.
Yeah.
Yeah. As the name implies, it will be experimental in Angular 18. And it will follow the same policy as they do with other features. It will go, if they see that it is acceptable, they will go through a developer preview, and then they will follow the policy and will become stable, hopefully next year, I don't know.
And the last one, whether the Forms API changes introduce some breaking changes to the new version.
No, the old observables will still work, but I think it makes more sense to use the new events observable if you subscribe to many, if your custom logic it's very complicated inside these subscriptions. So I would suggest to switch to the new events API because they will also add some new change events.
Okay, and that was the last one. So thank you one more time.
Thank you.
Pomóż mu złożyć komputer.
Can I just? Okay.
Okay, so that was the last talk we had for you today. And before I let you go, I need to make a few announcements. Just the first one, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks for all of the speakers. So make one more time maybe some, yeah. It was great, guys, to have you there on site. It's not easy to set up this kind of the meetup and just make the speakers come on site, so it's really special for us. The second thing is that for all of the people who are on site with us, there will be the Kahoot and there will be some gifts to win. So you can stay on the site after the all and just take part of this quiz. There will be some extra things to win. For those who are online with us, right now on the chat, you probably should see the link to the networking. There will be also the link to the survey. This is for all of us. So if you can fill this survey, provide us with the feedback and help us make future events even better, we will be really thankful. I need to remind you about the upcoming events. So the 11th June about the Angular performance, and the third meetup from Angular series, Angular Spring Camp series at the 18th of June. And probably that's it. Follow us on the social media, and thank you for being with us today. Have a nice evening.